Hello and welcome back to the Volunteer Income Tax Training Series. My name is Chris Moon. I am an Associate Teaching Professor at Iowa State University in the Ivy College of Business. In this video, we are going to discuss unique filing situations, and so in this video, we're really talking mostly about determining resident versus non-resident status. And you may have clients that come into the tax clinic who are here on various types of visas. And so in order to determine whether or not, first of all, that you can file their return if it's in scope, you first have to determine whether or not they are filing as a resident. I mentioned this in one of my previous videos, but you can see at the very beginning of TaxSlayer, this box will come up that says, what is your filing status? So it's really important to go through this Q&A with the client before you start their return, because if you actually, unless they've fixed this issue, if you file a non-resident alien as single, instead of doing non-resident alien then single, you'll have to deactivate the return and start completely over. So that's one of the reasons it's important to get this right from the very beginning. All right. So again, the definitions of all of these things are available in the Lincoln Learn online glossary. We are focusing here on resident versus non-resident and who can be claimed as dependents. So first of all, if you have someone who comes in who is not a United States citizen, the way that they are taxed varies depending on their status in the United States. So if they're not a U.S. citizen, they could be a resident alien or a non-resident alien. If they are considered to be a non-resident, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't file taxes as a resident. So their status, immigration status, is not the same necessarily as their tax filing status. So I just want to make sure you know that there's two separate sets of rules. We need to know their immigration status if they're here on a visa, but that doesn't dictate necessarily what their filing status is for taxes. So if someone has a green card, then for tax purposes, they are treated as a resident. So they will file taxes as a resident. Just so you know, if someone files taxes as a resident, they're filing the same exact tax form that a U.S. citizen would file. That doesn't make them a U.S. citizen, but it means they're filing the same forms. Non-resident forms are different than the forms that resident taxpayers and U.S. citizens file. It is called the 1040-NR, and they're taxed differently. They're taxed entirely differently, and there are lots of tax treaties that we'll talk about later in the foreign student section, but yeah, non-residents are taxed differently than U.S. citizens and residents. So how do we determine their tax filing status? So we are looking at something called the substantial presence test. We are going to apply the substantial presence test to non-residents who are not here on student or scholar visas. People who are here on student and scholar visas are exempt from the substantial presence test during their time on that visa. So if I have a taxpayer who comes in who is an F1 status, that is a student status, during the time that they are here on their F1 visa, they are exempt from the substantial presence test, and they are under a different set of rules. So that's not what we're talking about. We are talking about someone who is not here on a student or scholar visa. All right, so we're applying the substantial presence test, and what we need to determine is, was the person here at least 31 days during the current year, and 183 days during the 3-year period that includes the current year and the 2 years before. So we're going to count all the days in the current year, a third of the days from the previous year, and a sixth of the days from the year before that. Sometimes this is really simple. If we have, so in the last few years, we have done some tax returns for some citizens of Ukraine that have come to the United States, and they were able to get work visas, and so of course they needed to get their tax returns done. And so the question is, do they file taxes as a resident or non-resident? All right. So if that individual taxpayer was here in 2025 for 183 days, boom, it's done. Like, you don't even have to worry about the previous 2 years. So if they were here for 183 days in 2025 or more, you are going to file them as a resident. If they weren't here for 183 days in 2025, but they were here for at least 31 days, that's the point where we're going to look to see were they here in 24 and 23, and we're going to count those days also. All right. So most of the time we have someone who has been here for more than 183 days in 2025 or whatever the current tax year is, and we don't have to worry about the previous years. But in the event that someone left the United States and then came back maybe in November of 2025, so they were here for at least 31 days in 25, we have to look at those previous years. If we can't get to 183 days total, they are a non-resident and it's out of scope. You can't file that return. They have to have someone else do it. We actually are certified here at the Jardine Business Building to file foreign student returns, but not other NR returns. So those are out of scope for us as well. All right, non-resident alien spouse. So if you have a U.S. citizen or a resident alien who is married to a non-resident alien, and the non-resident alien spouse doesn't meet the green card or substantial presence test, there are other filing options. The taxpayer could file as married filing separately. The couple can choose to file married filing jointly. That actually is going to be out of scope for us, because in order to do the married filing jointly for a non-resident alien spouse, the taxpayers must declare in writing that they're choosing to treat the non-resident alien spouse as a resident on a joint return. And that is out of scope. We are not able to do that declaration or statement for them. We just can't prepare the return. It's out of scope. Or the taxpayer may choose, they may qualify for head of household under the regular rules for a married person who's considered unmarried, even though they are living with a non-resident alien spouse. It's a unique situation. So in order for that to happen, all of the following requirements must be met. The taxpayer must be U.S. citizen or resident alien for all of the year and meet all of those other considered unmarried rules besides the living with non-resident alien spouse. The non-resident alien spouse chooses not to file a joint return with them. The taxpayer must have a qualifying person to be eligible for this filing status. The spouse is not a qualifying person for head of household purposes. And then you would need to then go through and make sure that you meet the qualifications for head of household. So it's a very unique situation. I would just, if you've never done that one before, use caution, check with your site coordinator. If the site coordinator's not sure, I do sometimes get a lot of phone calls from people who are non-resident aliens on how to deal with those situations, just because I've dealt with so many hundreds of returns dealing with non-resident aliens. So feel free to contact me if you have questions on that. Okay, who can be claimed as a dependent? The test for qualifying child and relative applied the same way to citizens and resident aliens. It is important for you to note that not a lot of times I will have non-residents come in and want to claim their spouse as a dependent because their spouse is a dependent on their visa. And just remember that the rules for claiming a dependent on your tax return are different than the rules for who is your dependent on a visa. So again, we've got to separate out these immigration rules from the tax rules, and it does get confusing, but just knowing that in order to be claimed as a dependent, it must be those rules that we talked about before: citizen or resident, green card holder. Just check out publication 17. You can always go to irs.gov and look up who can I claim as a dependent. Also, in your 4012, go under the dependent section and look up the rules for who can be claimed as a dependent. So out of scope for this lesson, taxpayers with F, J, M, or Q visas, unless there is someone who is foreign student certified, we at the Jardine Business Building, we are all certified as foreign student, but we're generally only dealing with F and J visas here. We have seen M visas before, but the majority of the visas that we see here are F1 visas and F2 visas. Non-resident aliens who do not meet substantial presence test or the green card test are out of scope for us. We cannot file those. And also individuals who have dual status for the tax year. All right, so we determined how to figure out if someone is a resident or non-resident for tax purposes. Again, if you're struggling with that one, if you're struggling with how to count the 183 days, please contact me or someone else who has done a lot of non-resident returns. I recently just had to do an amendment for a client who had a paid tax preparer count the days wrong. This individual had been exempt from the substantial presence test as a student for several years, and for like 3 or 4 years, and then obtained a new visa in October of 2024. And so when you're applying the resident versus non-resident test, the paid tax preparer counted all of the days in 2024 for the substantial presence test, and that was inappropriate because the time that the person was a student under their F1 visa, they should have been non-resident under the F1 visa through October. So it's super complicated. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I think my phone number is generally given out, so you're also welcome to call me. So these are just some unique situations you may run into, and hopefully this will help you get through those. Thank you.